seem to fall to the floor.
Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to focus on nibs. Don't be surprised, that's kind of my focus. And one of the things that I really enjoy about fountain pens is the ability of changing nibs, grinding nibs, which I don't do, but I've had other people do. Maybe sometime in the future I'll get ambitious enough and have enough courage to actually grind a nib. So one of the things that has been commented on my pens is, what size is the nib and what kind of nibs can be replaced. So I did not have any number 5 nibs. So I saw these on Amazon. Here's the order that I placed. Knox is known as a good German nib manufacturer. You have Jova and you have Bach. You have a lot of other companies, I'm certain. Iridium Point, Germany. It's the generic one. So the other reason that I was intrigued with these two nibs is that one is an oblique double broad, which is quite a unique nib point to have on a number 5, and the other one is just a regular broad. This company was very nice. It received them quickly, and they included these two interesting pen nib bookmarks. I just enjoy the little touches like that, and a nice little note inside, and very well done, and just a good purchase. Very happy with it. But the thing to keep in mind is what pens I'm going to use these on, and it should be obvious. I'll give you 3 seconds to guess, and it's a pen that you've seen a number of reviews on, so it shouldn't be a surprise, the Jinhao 992. So we're going to go through replacing the nibs on the 3 I currently have inked up, and seeing how the writing experience changes by changing the nib. Stay tuned. Get these nibs close up before we put them into the pens. So this is the italic double broad, and I have to be very honest, I expected a bigger tip on this considering it's a double broad, but let's put ink on it and see how it actually writes. This is the broad nib. It is the two-tone design. Nice, looks good. The scroll work looks good, and again you can see based on the double broad, this is definitely not as much tipping material there, not as wide, and it's more of a rounded tip on it. The other one had a little bit of an angle, which is what you would expect on an oblique. It's kind of like a left oblique. Ink Dependence, Mike Matheson did a nice review on different types of nibs and how they write. I happen to like left obliques and have a few of them. So here's a 992 that you may recognize from a few other videos. It has a nice KWZ Azure ink in it. So I played around with taking the nibs out, and I found that using some type of gripping material, I use these rubber bands. It makes it easier to remove the nib, and it comes out relatively easily. And we're going to compare this to the nib that we're going to replace it with, and then put it in. So here's a comparison between the two-tone Knox nib on the left and the Jinhao nib on the right. It says fine on it. The Knox nibs are not marked with their designations, so I'm careful to make certain that I keep them separated because they'd be easy to confuse because they look pretty much identical. They're hard to tell unless you really look at them under a loupe. But the size is very similar. The wings on the Knox nib are a little bit wider, it looks like, than the Jinhao, but the length is more important. Obviously the size has to be similar, but the way the feed is manufactured with the collar and everything, it has a stop, so the nib can only go so far into the feed. So if you have a nib that's either too short or too long, it's not going to really work correctly. So these are pretty much almost identical lengths, so that's why they make a good replacement nib. So let's pop this one in, get the ink flowing, and put nib to paper. So I should have done a writing sample before I replaced the nib, so we're going to use this other 992 for a comparison. So this is the regular 992 nib. And this is Noodler's Massachusetts 54th, which is the latest one I eyedroppered, and it's been great. I really enjoy writing with the 992's with the nib that comes with a pen, but it's fun to play around. I'm a mechanic at heart. I love to experiment. So now we have the Knox. I should have given it more time for the ink to saturate through, but I think it should be okay. So this is the Italic double broad. It is definitely a wet writer. I mean, it's definitely smooth. Because of the way the flow is going, I just think it's going to take time. I cleaned the nib thoroughly with a detergent and made certain that everything would be okay. I mean, the 992 basic nib is smooth. This is really smooth. And that is a broad line. I'd say it's close to 2B. But I don't find much on the italics. You would think that it would be skinnier in one direction than the other, but it's pretty much the same width in both directions. So this is the KWZ Azure number 4, which is not known for shading or anything, but is certainly a nice, dark, dense blue ink. So overall, I'm happy. I think it's going to take some practice to get to be familiar with this nib. So the next one we're going to do with the regular nib first. And again, it's smooth, and I've never had any flow issues or anything with these 992's. And once I sealed the end, and this one I didn't even have to seal the end, it has been good. And I think some of the latest ones I got, I'm not going to worry about sealing the end. We'll eyedropper them and see how they hold up. I'm expecting them to hold up well. So we're going to replace this with the Knox broad nib and see how that changes the writing style. So I just pulled out the Jinhao nib. I didn't unscrew the assembly. I just pulled out the nib with my gripper and put in the Knox nib, and it just slides right in and stops right where it should. It's not quite as tight a fit, but it doesn't seem to move. So let's take a look at this one. I think that hard start is because the nib is not a quite perfect fit, but I think you can see it is a broader, wetter line, and as we talked about before, it lays down a lot of ink, and this is Roher & Klinger Sepia. So is this worth the money I paid for this nib to change the writing style of the 992? Well, time will tell. I certainly do like experimenting. It's nice to see that it was relatively easy to do. I'll take a few days and see if I enjoy it. The hard starts is not something I want to keep going with because that didn't happen with the original Jinhao nibs. So for the green one, which has Roher & Klinger Grün, I'm going to try something different. So we're going to try a gold nib with a little bit of flex to it. So these are two nibs that I found in my collection, which I thought might work. I originally thought a number 2 Waterman nib would work, but it took me a while to go through my number 2 nibs. They're not all the same. So here it is, comparing it to the original Jinhao. As you can see, the Jinhao is slightly longer, but the breather hole's in a similar spot. The wings on this warranted nib are a little wide, and this doesn't fit quite as well. When you slide it in, again, it hits up against the stop on that nib sub-assembly. So you want it to fit in a little bit nicer. So we're going to Pop that out. I'm hoping to get a lot more shading out of this Alt Gold Run ink. But we're going to lay down a comparison writing sample. So that'll give us something to compare when we swap the nib. So I've given time for everything to work through. So we're going to see how a vintage Waterman nib works in a Jinhao 992. I'm impressed. I like it. I mean, just for the mere fact that, you know, what a mashup. I just blown away. And it actually does pretty well on the wetness side. This is a semi-flex. It's not a full flex. I wasn't ready to do that. I don't think this feed is going to keep up with a full flex, but it still does a nice job. You can hear it's a little scratchy, but this is a pretty fine nib. You can see with no pressure, it is definitely a fine line. But with a little bit of pressure, it's going to lay down a lot more ink and expand. So this is certainly a more usable ink and pen combination with this nib than it was with the Jinhao nib. It's still not a wet writer by any stretch of the imagination, but it works well when it's flexed, which is what I wanted to get to. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video number 5 in the Jinhao series. We went through the original purchase, the eyedropper ring, the different ways of fixing the cracks, and now we can take a look at using other number 5 nibs to change the writing experience. So thank you for watching. May you have many excellent writing experiences. Enjoy the great variety of pens, nibs, inks, paper. Enjoy every day to its fullest. Talk to you later. Bye.